Can 2019 champs survive in 2025? Let's find out. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Mad Capper. This is another video on Raid Shadow Legends. This is another video on Raid Shadow Legends and a reboot of I Built Them So You Don't Have To. This is I Built Them So You Don't Have To 2025. That is right, I'm back. I'm making these videos. I've made my bed and I'm sleeping in it, which is why I don't understand why I even made the bed in the first place if I'm just gonna go sleep in it right after. But that's what's happening here. So I want to let you know my plan first off is to go through every single champion I've made guides for starting at the beginning and redoing them for today's game and see if they've got what it takes to survive for the free-to-play, for the low spend, for the whale that needs a particular niche champion for a particular niche solution. Whatever the case may be, we're going to deck these out as OP as possible. Just put the best gear on them, put the best everything, blessings, you name it. We're going to run them through the paces. However, I can't start right at the first. I wanted to start at the very first one I ever made. Can't do that because I don't have all the PNG files of the champions to make the thumbnails. So instead, we're starting with Crypt Witch. She was one of the older ones. She is one of the older champions, one of the OG champions in the game. So why don't we find out what she's made of next. Not so fast. Attacks one enemy. Will ignore 50% of the target's defense if this champion has a higher speed than the target. Dismantle. Attacks 3 times at random. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Each hit will also ignore 15% of the target's defense. Fetid Steel. Attacks one enemy. Deals 30% more damage if the target has any buffs. Will ignore shield and block damage buffs. Alright everybody, there was Crypt Witch's kit. As we stated, we'll do a brief review of it once again. Skills, we have this A3, which has ignore 50% of the target's defense if this champion has higher speed than the target. This was actually a buff done several years ago. Before, it was if the target had higher speed than her, which was ridiculous. So now you can build her with high speed or higher speed than what you know you're attacking, and you're able to get this ignore 50% of the target's defense on a single target. It's pretty good to melt one target down and get the opportunity to move on and flex, right? Her A2 here, the attack 3 times at random with that 50 book to 75% chance of a decreased defense for 2 turns, and also ignores 15% of the target's defense. I have never been a fan of A2s that don't have 100 or any A whatevers. Anything but A1 that doesn't have 100% chance, especially when it's random. So what you're doing here is you're offering multiple levels of RNG. 75% chance and random. So unless you've got a single target, in which case this may be helpful, getting 3 times on each of those hits, having that 75% chance. If you've got 3 or 4 targets, you don't know which they're going to land on, which does make it a little bit of a pain in the butt. The A1 has some interest in it. It has attacks one enemy and of course deals 30% more damage if they have any buffs, which is nice. Now keep in mind that you're faster than them, but on cycle you might catch up to a point where they have buffs after you've used the A3 and or A2. You've got the A1 here, which attacks one enemy. It does more damage if the target has any buffs and ignores shield and block damage. That can be situationally useful depending on where you are. I know that this really is helpful in certain areas. I believe in faction wars, where that block damage might come to just be a pain in the butt, so the A1 can actually ignore it. And the shield, of course, is always nice to ignore. Okay, next let's take a look at her masteries. We do have that Helm Smasher. The point of the Helm Smasher is we've already ignoring possibly 50%. We have a 50-50 chance of ignoring 75%. Additionally, on that A2, we just want, if we can ignore 100%, that's great. We're going to do as much as we can. Now, ultimately, your top gear would be, as with any high damage nuker, lethal or savage. We didn't do that with her, but you can get away with this sort of thing because you're already ignoring potentially so much. You're ignoring 50%, maybe another 25%. Then we've got the cruel gear for another 5%. So instead we decide to really up the ante on the crit damage, the attack, the getting crit rate, all this stuff. And it made for some pretty interesting stats. We do have our 6,175 at 348 crit damage while maintaining 224 speed, because one of the things is she's got to be faster than the other champion to do the damage. Also, we have 371 accuracy, which in most areas that you would even bring in Crypt Witch, that's probably going to be more than enough. Notice we have her a 5-star blessing, though I don't make use of it in this video. She's either going to be good with cruelty or probably more likely heaven cast. I pick heaven cast over cruelty because I like the fact that I can just bring in other champions. I can pick and choose some champions to really make use of this ability. Whereas cruelty, the fact is you have to hit her. You have to hit multiple times. So if you're bringing in a boss against a boss, then maybe you're going to want cruelty. You're probably going to have an AOE champion with cruelty in waves, or you're going to have, she could definitely work if you're taking her in against a boss. Maybe you're using her in Centranos in some sort of fashion. There was one other one, and I wish I could never remember. Yeah, this one here, Crushing Rend is another one. You can, first 2 hits each round, ignore a percentage of the target's defense. Will ignore 1% defense for every 25 levels. This is the other way to do it, and maybe actually, I'm going to choose this. This is really going to transform her ability, in my opinion. The first 2 hits each round ignores a percentage of the target's defense. And when you consider the fact that she's already ignoring so much defense, this is virtually going to make it 100% defense ignoring for the first hit with that A3. So I take it back. If I was bringing in a bunch of buffs, then maybe Heaven Cast would be the better option. Either of them is probably going to work pretty well. You also see we have her +3. She's got every possibility, in my opinion, to succeed. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in Alika, and we're going to bring in Crypt Witch. And, I mean, it's Doom Tower. I don't think it really matters. We'll put the increased accuracy here. So we saw what Crypt Witch has for stats. Let's take a look at Alika. Alika sitting at this 58.99, so just a little shy, a little less attack. 299, considerable less crit damage. 189, she's also much slower. And I believe she's only got a 4-star. We better check what she's using. I want to say it's cruelty for her blessing. Crushing Rend as well. So there we're almost comparing apples to apples. But again, Crypt Witch is going to get all the extras. She's got that 5th star, which gives her that unlocks a little extra. So let's see what happens here. All right. So let's take a look against this monstrosity here. First, without any decreased defense, let's take a look at this. Again, she's got her level 5 Crushing Rend. She's got this ability to ignore 50%. And all the fixins. She did 114, 124. Let's make sure he's locked out. Now let's take a look at her comparable A2, which ignores 50% if their max HP is higher, which of course it is. And 255. Therein lies the problem. But I will say you do have one added advantage here that you're able to put there that looked like 20 to 40k on each hit there. Now we've lost the rend. You saw what this does. It's not going to compare apples to apples because it's an AoE, but it does have that lockout skill. See, 110, 212 versus a weak hit. Let's get back around again. You can see the A3 here, 70k, not a big deal. 55. So you see that in spite of the fact she's got better gear, she's ignoring more defense, she's got more attack, she's got more crit damage. The problem therein lies in her, and of course I had him open and now I closed it. The problem lies in her multipliers. And that's unfortunately where in this game everything lies. Everything is contained within what those multipliers are. Everything else is irrelevant. What's her base attack? Who cares? What's her crit damage? Doesn't really matter. What matters is what are her multipliers, because whatever her multipliers are, that's when you can up the ante. Fetid Steel has a multiple of 3.4. It's only strong in that if you are dealing with a shield champion or a block damage, you get 30% more damage, and it ignores those two items. Bam. That's a lot. So buffed ignores it. As well as, I wonder if we can, no, we can't. I was going to say we should have brought in a HP burn champion to force a buff on this champion and see how much that increase really looks like. But it's just okay. Her dismantle attacks 3 times at random, has 75% chance of placing that decreased defense. It's pretty weak. It ignores 15% of the target's defense. Doesn't mean a whole lot. It's on a 4-turn cooldown. So not only is it random, not only is it 75%, but it's not even a 3-turn cooldown. It's a 4-turn cooldown. She seems to just not get any breaks. And honestly, if they ever did look at buffing this champion again, I got suggestions, because there's a whole lot of opportunity there. And then her A3 ignores 50% of the target's defense if this champion has higher speed. So it's already got a qualifier, and yet the multiplier is only 4.5. And you're saying only 4.5. I'm saying that, but let's go to, sorry, I'm zooming in here. You're looking good. You're looking good. Let's go to Alika, because that's who we're comparing. And we'll just see the difference in champions and why one. And keep in mind, Alika's utility with those lockouts, through the roof, right? Through the frickin' roof. She's got a 4.2 multiplier on her A1, plus a 50% chance to hit a second time. So her multiplier multiplies, which is huge, right? That's a huge bonus or added benefit. Her A2 is a 6.3. It was a 4.5, and she has to be faster. Guess what? Max HP is well defined. So is speed. They both have similar qualifiers. 6.3 times attack. Again, does it matter if their attacks are near identical? What's the difference? 4.5, 6.3, and then has an AoE at 4. A 4-time AoE is good damage. It's not crazy damage for an AoE, but it's good damage. But it has the chance to lock everyone out for 2 turns, which effectively means 1 turn. It's a 100% chance when booked, not some 75% to 3 champions randomly. The reality is, Crypt Witch, just not going to compare it. In 2025, she's only gotten worse because more champions have been added that can take the place of the things that you may possibly need her for. Why don't we go now to final thoughts, and we'll wrap up our first 2025 resurgence of the I Built Them series. All right, my final thoughts on Crypt Witch. The reality is, in 2018, 2019, she was a niche fit because you needed that decreased defense if you didn't have the only other Knight Revenant champion in the game to do it, and that was Tomb Lord on an AoE scale. Crypt Witch was the difference between winning and losing in faction wars for many people, my own account included. However, as this game has gone on, Knight's Revenant has expanded exponentially, and therefore the need to have that decreased defense on an AoE has lessened. There's so many ways to survive. There's so many other ways to beat the faction wars, for example. And when you look at the champions, Miscreated Monster, Rector Drath, Sepulchre Sentinel, these have all been added after the fact. Pestilus. These are all champions that can help you survive, and therefore no longer need to rely on getting those decreased defenses, which by the way were 2, not 3, back in the original iteration of her. and it makes it a lot easier for Solace even. There's a lot of ways to survive while chipping away at the enemy, even without decreased defense. On top of that, way more legendaries. There's more opportunities to have debuffs on this crew than there was originally. From the wider scope of the entire game, that is an exponentially true statement. There are so many epics that do everything that she can do better. Alika does the ignore defense better. She has a way better multiplier, does way more damage, and has better utility on the back end. The amount of decreased defense debuffers in this game that are on a 3 or 4 turn 100% among epics is in the dozens now, in the multiple dozens. Might even be two baker's dozen. I don't even know. I feel like there's probably at least 2 per faction and maybe more. So you do not need to rely on this nearly what it used to be. She still, however, has a niche for the early game player that pulls this champion and needs to get past content where there's a shield, a block damage in the way where her A1 ignores it plus gets extra damage for buffs, or her A3 against a higher defense champion that is just being picky. Also against bosses, including the clan boss, that random 3-hitter becomes a very strong 3-turn when booked cooldown, 3-hit decreased defense with a reasonable expectation of it landing. Therefore, you can use her in those early scenarios. However, she falls off a cliff in the mid game, so I would be very hesitant to recommend putting any resources into her that you will regret later. That means books. That means possibly potions in the early game. That means chickens. If you take her to 6-star, know that at one point she's going to end up a Vault Guardian even for the free-to-play player. And do you really want to have a 6-star Vault Guardian that costs you this much? Probably not. So my suggestion, it's a very low on it, but if she is the answer to a piece of content in the mid to late game, then you could probably revisit. But until then, I would keep her at 50 and I'd bring her in for a big swing and a hit on this. And I would hope to gosh that you're not building her just to try to get that decreased defense like we had to do back in the day. If this is still 50% on a 4-turn cooldown, that'll be fine for whatever niche content you're trying to do. I wouldn't put books into her anywhere. The other 2 are just damage and they aren't for cooldowns. The Faction Wars speed is very nice, especially in the early mid game. So she does have that niche usability, like I said. If you're free to play, do not put resources into her that you cannot take back. If you take her to 50, she's still a 5-star chicken. You can still use her down the road rather than relegating her to the vault. If you keep her in your vault at 50 and at some point you're challenging the last couple stages of Knight's Rev and you just need that champion, that actual ignore defense can be pretty impactful against those bosses. So you may want to keep her around just in case you need her and you didn't pull a good legendary or something crazy in the stages 20-21 range when you really need that damage. So keep her around just in case. But for the most part, I would say she's a Vault Guardian at best. Faction Wars, possibly. Specialist, maybe. But overall, you're probably not going to want to spend any resources on her. Those are my thoughts on Crypt Witch 2025. What do you think? Please let me know in the comments down below. Do you have a Crypt Witch? Did you build her 5 years ago? Did you build her 5 weeks ago? And how do you feel about her? Let me know. But as always, that is it. Another edition of I Built Them So You Don't Have To. The return of the series is officially here. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Please be kind, be safe, and we'll see you in the next video.